Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of Echo from the Buttes. I'm your host, Tom Harden. With me as always, Austin Bundy and Andrew Hazlett. And yesterday was an exciting day for Sun Devil football. Aside from the portal news that we've been having, it was officially schedule release day. The 2026 schedule for Arizona State and the entire Big 12 was announced yesterday. And we've already known that the Sun Devils will be heading to London on September 19th to take on Kansas in technically an away game. But we finally got the dates for all the rest of the Big 12 opponents outside of Arizona. We've always known that was going to be Thanksgiving weekend. But I want to, before we go week by week through the schedule, I want to pivot to both of you guys. What's your immediate takeaways from the schedule? Andrew, we'll lead off with you.
Yeah, I look at those key road games you're going to A&M, you're going to London, and then you've got probably they were the Big 12 champion and runner-up on the road in BYU and Texas Tech, and then I believe the only other road game this year, or next, well, I guess it's this year since it's 2026, next season is going to be at UCF, which is a program on the rise, and that's a trip all the way to Florida on the other side of the country. I would call all those games winnable games, but I'd also call them losable games just because of the situation and scenario between all of them. You've got great teams like A&M, Tech, and BYU, who, if no matter where you're playing them, it's going to be tough. And then going, like I said, all the way to Florida, just traveling across the country is always tough, no matter who you're playing. And then going to London, that's an absolute wild card. It's going to be, I think, that game is the team that better prepares for London is going to be the team that wins that game, and that's not going to be it's not going to be whoever's the better team on paper or anything. It's going to be preparation for having everything being thrown just a curveball at you. So that's my huge takeaway.
Yeah, I think Andrew really hit that on the head. I mean, I'm looking at each of these games, and like you said, I think they're all very winnable. I don't think any ASU is going to go undefeated next year, but I do believe ASU is going to be a contender for the title again. Just things that stand out to me. I mean, obviously Morgan State's got to be a win. Hawaii's got to be a win. Colorado, Oklahoma State. Dare I say Kansas State's also got to be one of those must-win games. Going on the road this season is going to be the biggest key, like Andrew said, to having any kind of success. Like London is going to be the biggest, toughest test because ASU hasn't played overseas. At least this version of ASU has not played overseas. And you're with it being a conference opponent, like it's going to be gigantic in the standings. You're going to need that. I'm excited specifically for that A&M game, though, going down to another SEC powerhouse. Kyle Field is very difficult to play in, but if anything, Kenny should be going to that Miami CFP game and pointing to it and say, like, it's not impenetrable. This is a fortress that we very well could go and play our game and sneak out of there with a win. So I'm excited for that game. The UCF game's got my attention just because it's an East Coast game. It's all the way down in Florida, but potentially that's something I'm circling to maybe take a little PTO, fly down to Orlando to go see the Devils in that one. But otherwise, I'm excited for this season. This is a very winnable slate for the Sun Devils.
When you bring up the Miami CFP game at Kyle Field, I think that should be a big part of the preparation as Coach Dillingham gets the team ready, is not only watching the game film on A&M, but watching how Carson Beck and Miami really thrived in that hostile atmosphere and how they overcame the home field advantage to come out of there with a win on their way to the appearance in the national championship game. And going right from there to London, I've been hearing that the team is going to fly directly from Texas to London, so that'll be nearly a full week of acclimation to the time change. It'll give the Sun Devils ample time to get used to the playing surface at Wembley. It'll be obviously an opportunity for the guys to do a little sightseeing on their own as well. You don't want to have this be strictly all business with such a marquee event. It'll be a great, if that does come to be, and I see no reason why it wouldn't. A full week to prepare will go miles to helping the Sun Devils come away with the win over the Jayhawks. My biggest takeaway is just, and this is simply just how the schedule shakes out with only one bye week from now until I believe 2031, is going from October 3rd all the way through the end of the season, 9 straight games. That's something that we haven't seen in college football in quite a while. I don't think it's certainly been at any point in recent years, but this is going to be a grind for the Sun Devils to go down the wire and look for that berth in the Big 12 championship game. Fingers crossed, hoping that the injury bug doesn't rear its ugly head like it did this year. But these guys are going to, Coach Dillingham, I believe, will have these guys well conditioned, and the coaching staff will have them, coaching staff, training staff, everybody will have the guys in tip-top shape, ready for every week as it comes, and really just taking this schedule a week at a time. The alternating travel for me also was really stood out, going from October 10th through October 28th, alternating one home, one away. You're not able to have the comforts of home for a sustained stretch starting in mid-October, but maybe that's just what this team needs, is to have that inability to settle, to stay at their best on the field. I mean, do you guys think there's any merit to that idea?
I do. I just think that just going on the road and then going on, just alternating, like you said, just allows the team to go from one place to another. Like, you get in, so that you still have your road routine and not fall out of that. If you were to stay at home, and vice versa, you have your home routine, get into that. So I think that's good in that fact. But I want to go back to a couple points you said earlier, Austin and Tom, is that when Miami went into Kyle Field and won, and then going on the road to going to London, Kenny Dillingham mentioned in the middle of the year in one of his Monday press conferences that he draws on advice from other coaches. He calls other coaches for advice. Sometimes it's scheming, sometimes it's just other stuff about being a coach. And he also has said that he gives advice. Wondering if he knows Mario Cristobal to say, can I have some of your takeaways that you did to beat A&M? And then I know Georgia Tech and Florida State recently played overseas. And I know Mike Norvell was on the staff at Arizona State at one point, so that could be another connection that Kenny Dillingham could be leaning on. Say, hey, how do you get guys to travel well? So that could be something for me to see. I wonder if something that Kenny's doing.
If we're going to talk about coaches that he's going to be picking brains, I mean, my first phone call would be Dan Lanning in Oregon, and ask him, how the heck did you shut out Texas Tech in the playoff there?
He's probably made that call already. If not, going to call him a few times, because
Probably has a standing call as the season gets closer. But I want to go week by week and just give our off the cuff knee jerk reaction of how winnable you think each game is. We'll start with week 1, hosting Morgan State, which is actually a replacement of the originally scheduled game against Bowling Green. This is an HBCU that isn't typically known for their football prowess, but it's far from me to overlook any opponent. That being said, this should still be a game that Arizona State wins handily to start the season with a 1-0 record.
Easily.
Yeah.
This is your come out and prove to everybody that this past season was injury riddled, unlucky. Like, this is where the real ASU stands up and gets off to a real hot start.
Yeah, I'd give them a 98% chance of winning that one at this point in time, just because Morgan State's one of those FCS schools that isn't, like you said, Tom, one at the near the top. NAU last year was one of those schools. Morgan State doesn't really move the needle for me. They're coming all the way from Baltimore, Maryland, which is I assume everyone out here listening knows that Morgan State is not a real state, unfortunately. But that's a long journey for them. I talked about earlier how ASU's got that long journey to UCF. That's going to be a long journey for Morgan State as well, so something to look out for.
And it's also worth noting that this is the only home game for Arizona State in the month of September. It does kind of mitigate the built-in home field advantage with the early season heat. But as we've seen, for Andrew, you and I here, certainly that heat does have a tendency to creep into October. So it may not be as finite, but we'll certainly see how that impacts as the season goes on as well. Moving on to Texas A&M road game at Kyle Field, as we were talking about. This is it all comes down to just the preparation that Coach Dillingham is able to get for the guys and get them coached up, get them ready for that SEC atmosphere. I think learning from going down to Starkville last year, really woke Coach Dillingham up to just what it means to go down to the SEC on the road. So I think he's going to be better prepared for just any atmosphere. And that being said, this is a CFP team that came off of hosting a first round playoff game. They're not going to roll over. I think it's certainly winnable, but gotta have the entire roster on the same page and have all the coaching staff, everybody in line with play calling, with execution. It doesn't necessarily have to be a perfect game to win, but you need to be firing on all cylinders to be able to pull this one out.
Yeah, and that starts with the quarterback, whoever that's going to be at this point. That needs to be defined, and you need to have full confidence in whoever that QB is. We've mentioned 4 different guys: Boley, Fetty, Keene, and Cameron Dyer as possible quarterbacks that could be starting. Well, whoever that is, they need to have it figured out by then, because you have to be 100% all in behind your quarterback to win this game, because it's going to be a tough game. That Texas A&M, they have a lot of success. They're going to be continuing with it. So I would give them, call it a 27% chance to win that game.
And I thought giving them just a toss-up, calling it a 50-50 was going to be the pessimistic take on this one. But I again, this is going to come down to health. It's going to come down to preparation. But I feel confident enough to say that ASU is going to play this Texas A&M team closer than people are going to expect. ASU early in seasons in non-conference historically is a toss-up. But with Kenny at the helm and the amount of talent they were able to bring in the transfer portal, I'm confident that they're going to surprise some folks, I think. I'm not sure if they're going to fully win the game, but because A&M's going to have Marcel Reed back at quarterback. They will not have their top receiving option with them. He's going to the NFL. This is where I think ASU plays a really close game. Maybe they lead for a little bit. Whether or not they're leading in the fourth quarter when this thing hits triple zeros, I got no idea. But I am confident enough to say that I think they're going to play a close enough game to where it's entertaining, and we are either going to be elated that they pulled off such an upset, because A&M would be shocked if they're not a top 10 team going into next year, or we'll be potentially hanging our heads because they were just that close to pulling off the upset.
I think the earlier in the day, the better ASU's chances are.
If I were to put any bets down on what time this game is going to be, I would imagine it'll be a later game just to get that prime time slot for the SEC. But what do I know? I'm just throwing darts here. Moving on to the London game. This game I think is I'm going to go out on a limb and say about 85% chance that Arizona State comes away with the win. Kansas has been able to play spoiler against some teams in the Big 12, but I just think that losing a home game, it shouldn't have that big of an impact on a team. But I think traveling overseas and knowing that you're not going to have quite as dominant a home crowd is going to be a little bit of an X factor. What I will be very curious about is to see not only how many Sun Devil fans make the trip out, but what the mix of the crowd is. Whether it is college football fans coming in specifically for the game, or if it's people who just happen to be in London traveling and it's, oh, hey, here's a college football game, or if it's, London locals getting their first exposure to college football. I'm interested to see what the mix of fan will be.
ASU's got a very large alumni base internationally as well. I would not be surprised if there's a few expats over there that are going to be going to this game, whether they're from the UK or from Europe in general.
And I believe Michael Crow also just announced the opening of the Arizona State University London campus, so that'll certainly play into some of the quote home field advantage.
Yeah, I'm gonna give this game. I'm not gonna be as optimistic as Tom, but I'll say it's like a 60. I'll go with 68% chance of winning, just because London games are in just wild cards. Because you see it in the NFL. Jacksonville, when they're bad, they sometimes win those NFL London games that they're in theory not supposed to. The same thing could happen to Arizona State with coming off a loss or possible loss, but coming off of an A&M game where it's going to be intense, going to be emotional, I think, regardless of who wins or loses that. I think that's going to be something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give them a 75% chance just because I like their odds against a Kansas team that seems to be not floundering but still trying to find its identity. And as much as it's technically a home game for them, I do feel confident saying that I think the crowd numbers are going to favor ASU just because of that international fan base. I think that ASU fans will travel for this. And I like the wild card factor to favor ASU because as we've seen, especially in those Ireland games, teams that are, I wouldn't say necessarily expected to win, but the ones that are more well-known, the ones that are a little more established are the ones that tend to be caught on the back foot. And ASU tends to thrive in chaotic atmospheres, so you never know if this is a rainy game or if this is just one of these games where, because of the time difference, maybe Kansas gets off to a slow start, something like that. I mean, I like to think that ASU has got the benefit of the wild card here.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how that entire week shakes out and just what the lead up to the game is. And all the extra pomp and circumstance that goes into this game as well, because you're going to see a lot more fanfare than there is at a typical college game, and that's going to throw off timing for guys on game day with their rituals that they have for the game, whatever on-field ceremony there's going to be. It's going to have some sort of impact, whether it be good or bad. We won't see that until the game actually kicks off. But after the Devils come back stateside, they will have their only bye week of the season at the end of September before hosting Baylor to open the month of October. This will be mostly the Baylor team that we saw last season. I think didn't really live up to expectations that they were looking for. Certainly didn't live up to the hype that even some of us internally built up leading up to the matchup in Waco. That being said, it's going to be coming off the bye week. The guys will be accustomed to Arizona time once again, but just how much will that travel have been a disruption to the regular flow of practice weeks and off weeks? How will the team recover from coming back overseas? I think I'm going to hedge my bets here a little bit. I'm going to say about a 65% chance for ASU to win. I think that it's again, it comes down to the wild card factor of just how much the travel will impact the team.
I'm gonna invoke the health factor here. As much as they do have the bye week, I would not be surprised if this Kansas game, especially coming off of an intense Texas A&M game, is one where a few guys get injured, especially along that offensive line potentially. And as much as you would hope a bye week would be enough to heal some guys up, I wouldn't be surprised if there are some missing key pieces in some key spots going into this Baylor game, and I'd give them more of a 45% chance to win this game. I would not be surprised to see Baylor's quarterback DJ Lagway have a decent game in Tempe and potentially frustrate ASU secondary. He'll have just a little bit more talented of a roster than he did at Florida, a little more stable coaching. So as much as I'd like to believe home field advantage in a bye week is going to benefit ASU, but if we know anything as fans, a lot of times when the circumstances tend to add up in ASU's favor, they don't necessarily take full advantage.
I'm going to swing the opposite way here. I just think DJ Lagway is a downgrade from what Sawyer Robinson was last year. I believe their tight end from Baylor's going to be going into the draft as well. So for me, I like ASU's chances a lot. Like Tom said, I'm going to say 71% chance for ASU in this one. ASU's very good at home. We've seen in the last few years, especially when they're healthy, because I'm going to throw that little asterisk on there, is that when ASU has its quarterback and star receiver healthy, best two players on offense, they're undefeated in the last 2 years. So I think that will continue.
I got to say, I love the precision in your percentages there, Andrew. You've given this a lot of thought for being on the fly, so I do give you major props for that. Sun Devils do have back-to-back home games. October 10th, hosting Hawaii. This is a very winnable game. I'm going to say about a 90% chance to win. I will not be nearly as precise as Andrew, but this is a team that I'm a big fan of Timmy Chang, and I loved watching him play when he was at Hawaii while I was in high school. But that's about the extent of what I will love Hawaii for that specific week. This is a game that Arizona State, if they come off of the loss that Austin is leaning towards, I won't say that you are predicting, but that you're leaning towards, this will be a game that the Sun Devils are going to come out ready to put that week behind them and pity to Hawaii for having to be in the way of that steamroller.
Yeah, this is a get-right game if it would to be coming off a loss. Or even if they have even if they beat Baylor, but it's one of those games where they have like the 4 turnovers and they somehow pull off the win. This is a get right game. I give them 85% to win, just because I don't think you can ever write off Hawaii. They're like the wild card of wild card teams out there. But when they come stateside, I think their power is a little diminished. But if this was going to Hawaii, going up against the Rainbow Warriors, it's always a toss-up going down there and coming out with the win, just because of time difference, climate, all that stuff. But yeah, I'm excited for this game. I'm a big fan of Hawaii. I'm really excited to see them finally get this matchup. So it'll be interesting to see who comes out on top here.
Yeah, I like Timmy Chang. I like what he's doing at Hawaii. Took him to a bowl last season and won the Hawaii Bowl. They beat Stanford. They beat Cal last year. So I think they're going to be a good team. I give ASU an 82% chance to win. I even saw a prediction of, I don't know who it was, but someone was predicting that Hawaii was going to be the group of 5 representation for the CFP, which I think is a little bit of a stretch at this point. But I think they are, with this Mountain West pack, whatever you want to call the number now, it's kind of split with the Western teams in the FBS. It's kind of leaves that in a Wild West state. How well will these conferences be valued from the committee's eyes? I just don't see Hawaii, even if they go 11-1, being selected as the group of 5 representative. But I do think they will win 8-9 games and head to a bowl game for sure, I would say.
Well, we did see an 11-1 James Madison come out of the Fun Belt.
Is this the first year the Pac-12 gets the absorbed Mountain West, or does that start?
Yes. Yep.
That is this year.
2026
Okay.
will be the rebirth of the Pac Mountain 12, 8, however many teams are going to join it, but they will be above the 6-team minimum to to resume the Pacific 12 name. So all hail Pac-12 after dark. We're going to move on to a game that's going to be certainly circled on the opponent's schedule and should be circled on Arizona State's schedule as well. That is none other than the October 17th trip to Lubbock, Texas, to take on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. We all know what happened last year. Texas Tech came into Tempe expecting to come away with a win and continue their march towards what was going to be at the time an undefeated run of Big 12 play. Arizona State was the only team that disrupted that hope and dream, but you know for a fact that the Red Raiders are going to be angry and ready to get revenge after that game. This is going to be the first game that I really don't truly like Arizona State's chances. I think that Texas Tech, coming off of the season that they had in 2025, is going to be just a monster yet again. I think that I'm going to put it at about a 20% chance for Arizona State to win.
I'm going to go a little more optimistic. I'm going to go 26% chance, a little bit less than what I think ASU's chances of winning at A&M. But I want to say, going back to the past, these first 3 years, ASU has played Texas Tech 3 times, which I'm curious on why the schedule makers made that decision. Maybe they just knew ASU and Texas Tech were going to be the next 2 powerhouses or something. But it's interesting why ASU and Tech got scheduled for 3 years in a row instead of Colorado or a Utah, where ASU had traditionally played those teams yearly, and now this year is going to be the first year ASU hasn't played Utah, and I don't think Colorado's on this year's schedule either. And Colorado wasn't on the 2024. No, they weren't on the 2024 schedule either. So that's interesting to me. I don't know why. That's something that when I realized that, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But I do think this Texas Tech team, I don't think Sorsby is as good as people think he is, quite frankly. And hey, the loser of this game has gone on to win the Big 12 championship. So that's all I've got to say there.
Give me a 51% chance they win this thing.
Mr. Optimism here.
I'm going to be optimistic on this one just because, just exactly what that last little point that Andrew made is the loser of this game has gone on to win the conference. So if ASU wins this game, I think Texas Tech is still the juggernaut of the conference again. Colorado is on our schedule on November 7th, but I think the schedule makers maybe are trying to play into a little bit of building new rivalries here. So having Texas Tech and BYU on there again, I think they're trying to build into those somewhat naturally geographic rivalries with this schedule. But I'm all for it. I would like a rivalry with Texas Tech. Especially seeing how good the teams have been these first 2 years in the Big 12. I kind of like something like that, especially since the two teams have a bit of a history going back to the end of the Patrick Mahomes era, and then immediately following that, having a controversial game there. BYU, it's BYU. It's Arizona State. Like, you can start drifting into maybe Barstool territory there with the two competing moralities of the universities, if you want to pit those two against each other. But I like it. I like the way that they've started to lean into these things, but specifically on the Texas Tech game, I also like Andrew said with Sorsby, maybe he's not as good as we think he's going to be. I would not be surprised to see us having to face Will Hammond again potentially in this game. But just let's say injuries happen, or maybe Sorsby just is not consistent. Who knows? We've seen weirder things happen in college football, but I feel like this is one of those games where ASU plays up to the competition and potentially surprises people.
Well, it looks like we've got Aya joining us. Aya, if you can hear us, give us your take on Arizona State playing Texas Tech for a third straight season.
This is going to be such a fascinating matchup between those two teams. Like, you can see, like, the script has written throughout the past 2 seasons, both of those teams who have lost on the road to like opposing opponents, which in 2024, Arizona State losing to Texas Tech on the road, they ended up advancing to the Big 12 championship game, and especially the college football playoff, in which they lost to Texas in double overtime of Peach Bowl that year, and then the following season, Texas Tech fall to Arizona State, in which I was at that game. That was actually my first football game that I reported that year, which is basically pretty fascinating. And the Red Raiders went on to win the Big 12 championship, and they lost to the Oregon Ducks in the Cotton Bowl on New Year's Day. But except it's very different results. I mean, it's going to be a pretty interesting rivalry to keep an eye on as well. And adding in Arizona State getting the opportunity to travel to London to face Kansas Jayhawks, I am all here for it as well.
You guys have all brought up the idea of building new rivalries, and I'm in favor of that. This is a very strong possibility for a budding rivalry within the Big 12. So I'm interested to see just how far this goes down the road. We'll move on to the next home game, hosting Kansas State. I think this is a must-win for Arizona State. Whether it is a must-win due to conference standing or whether they've lost to Texas Tech the previous week, I think that this is just a very winnable game for the Sun Devils. I'm gonna try and be as precise as Andrew here. I'm gonna go with an 84% chance to win. Andrew, your turn to play Price is Right.
I'll defer this one to Austin here, honestly.
He's just the law of averages here. He's waiting for me to go way low on this so he can come out in the middle. No, this is a very winnable game as much as like Avery Johnson's coming back. He has struggled to really find his identity at K-State. K-State in general has struggled to find the identity, I think, and meet the expectations that a lot of people put on their shoulders the last 2 years. I think ASU, especially this game being at home, I'd give them, 82%.
You've got a very narrow window to fit between, Andrew. Start pulling out the decimals.
I'm not gonna be doing decimals. I like those numbers. I'm gonna go. I'm like thinking now. I'm gonna go a little lower, 79 for me. But just right in that ballpark of, Kansas State. I'm not moved by what they're doing. Avery Johnson. Everyone had Kansas State as the favorite to win the Big 12 in 2025. They obviously didn't. So it wasn't a huge surprise to me that they kind of underwhelmed. But as much as they did, it was a surprise. I don't see that team winning more than 7 games this year, to be honest.
Your turn. How winnable is this Kansas State game?
This is a very great question. Depending on how Arizona State has constructed a roster due to transfer portal and especially incoming freshmen from high school, it's going to be very fascinating to see how it will all work out. I could see a 50-50, but leaning towards the winning side, I could see Arizona State taking home the win from London. Basically, the last time I've been to London was almost 7 years ago, COVID, and I also went to Hamilton, which is it's a little bit off topic of me to bring up, but I mean, it's pretty cool to see Arizona State getting to travel internationally for those games. I mean, might as well make a bucket list of traveling to an international game to cover one in the future.
There we go, and we're talking about the Kansas State game later on in October, back here in Tempe. We'll come back to that one. We brought up the point that Arizona State does not play Utah this season, but will still be visiting the Beehive State and playing on the road Halloween night at BYU. I overheard a comment last night on Ralph Amsden's Spaces that was akin to Provo basically runs on sugar, so Halloween is the equivalent of their Mardi Gras. I'm not sure how much I lean into that side of things, but This to me is another budding rivalry. It's not necessarily budding. It's a rivalry that has existed in lesser terms than obviously the Territorial Cup, with a high BYU fan base here in the Phoenix area and around the state. So tension. I wouldn't say tensions get high, but it's always a fierce game whenever any of the programs play head to head. And this is I'm looking ahead to this game. I think that this is called about a 68% chance for Arizona State to win. You kind of never know what you're going to get when you go to Utah in October. It could be frigid cold, and it could be unseasonably warm. You'd never really know what the forecast is going to be, and I think that's going to be a big part of the fact that goes for or against the Sun Devils on that Halloween night.
I mean, this is ASU, BYU on Halloween weekend. They run on sugar up there because they really can't run on a whole lot else. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this game. I don't think you can ask for much else in a big matchup like this. If you're an ASU student, you travel for this game. You better get your butt up to Provo. This is one that's worth going up for. I like their chances in this game. I do understand with BYU having proven this year, not having Jake Retzlaff and being able to bring in a freshman quarterback and pretty much dominate the Big 12 from start to finish. They came up just a little bit short because Texas Tech just had their number all year long. But this is another one of those games where I feel like ASU can play up to its competition, take advantage of the budding rivalry that I think the schedule makers are trying to push on here. And I'll say it because you're a coward. I'm going to give them 69% to win this game.
LOL.
Clap. Well done.
Halloween weekend at Provo, Mormons versus Sun Devils. Come on, man. You got to lean into the bit at this point.
I'm not going to be optimistic here. That's how I'm going to start it. And I know Austin might be the chief pessimist here, but I'm with these predictions. Maybe he's not. To me, ASU, the last two times they've went up to Utah to play, even though it was Utah, they got blown out of the water. Yes, BYU is a different team. It's still Salt Lake City. I'm not confident in that. And I think BYU is the most underrated team in the Big 12 within the past few years. I think there's a case that you can argue that even though they haven't had the championship, they've been the most consistent team the past 2 years in this new Big 12. And I think they're going to be a top 3 or 4 team for sure. And I think this is going to be a loss. I'm going to say a 32% chance to win. I think BYU, they want to win this one. And this is probably it's the 2 Texas road games, and BYU are the 3 toughest games on the schedule. And you can put all of them in the same tiers. Yeah, ASU is probably going to be the underdog going into it, I think, but they could win it. But I don't think they will. I think that BYU team's very good. Kalani Sitake is one of the top coaches in the Big 12.
All right, your turn, Aya. How winnable is BYU?
This is a very good question. I could see it on below 50, knowing that BYU has one of the best atmospheres. I mean, Arizona State has been building the momentum with the Activate the Valley motto that Kenny Dillingham has stated throughout the past few years, and you can see how sold out the crowd has been at Mountain America Stadium, in which I still call it the Sun Devil Stadium, with all due respect.
As anybody should.
But I could see the Sun Devils. It's still 50-50 for me, like I said earlier, at the Kansas as well, but I could see it more towards the loss. But mind you, I would be surprised if they got to win through a close game situation. I'm just calling it.
All right, from one fellow former corner state to another, moving on to the final 4 games of the season. Colorado comes to Tempe, and to me, Call this a little bit of speculation if you want, but we know with Deion Sanders' health, I haven't, I think it's been, very, I have no reason to believe that there's anything that would keep him from coaching. But how long do you think he does still continue coaching at Colorado after after his battle with cancer over the last year? That I think is going to be a factor for for how Colorado does this whole season. Again, I have absolutely nothing to go off of. This is just pure wild speculation. Charlie Day gif in front of the string wall. If that's what you want to call it. But all that aside, I think that this is still a game that the Sun Devils should be pulling away from easily. I'm gonna go about a 76% chance to win.
Sounds about right. I mean, when it comes to prime time, I think this is the determining year for him. If they do not, they really shouldn't have championship expectations anymore, especially since he's not been able to really throw together a very compelling roster, especially since his son's left and Travis Hunter left. I think this will be a determining season. If they do any worse than 6 wins, I would not be surprised if school leadership comes to him and says, hey, would you consider, stepping down just because this clearly is a burden on you? We know you're doing your best, but also, there's the longevity of the program at stake here, and name brand's only going to get us so far. So when it comes to this specific matchup, I'm pretty confident this is a game ASU should win. I'd give it maybe 76% that they're going to come away with a win on this. I think this is a game where this is a game where I would not be surprised if ASU clinches bowl eligibility on, but this is one of those must-have games. You can't play down your competition on this one. I'm not doubting a quarterback like Julian Lewis to be terrible, but he's also doesn't have a whole lot of support. So that's where I think Colorado needs a lot of help, and I don't think they got enough of it in the transfer portal to really be competitive.
Yeah, I'm not a believer in Colorado. They've been kind of, I'm just gonna say, they've been bad for the majority of my life. Kind of the basement of the Pac-12 and the Pac-12 South. From my memory, I just don't think Colorado's that good. I'm going to be more optimistic than the two of you. I'm going to give them an 89% chance to win. I think they have a better chance to win this game than the Hawaii game, at the matter of fact. I just don't see Colorado to be a contender. Like Austin Tom said, regardless of health, I think this could be Prime's last season in Colorado. I'm not a believer. I'm just not. I don't think this is a team that's going to contend for anything meaningful in the Big 12.
Your thoughts on Colorado?
I agree with what both of you, Austin and Andrew, has said about Colorado. I mean, it's hard to tell about the state of Colorado's football program throughout the past few years, knowing that they had one of their success in wide receiver, in which he is now drafted by Jacksonville Jaguars at number 2 in 2025 NFL draft. I think it's DeAndre Hunter, if I'm stating it right. So, I mean, it's going to come down to how long Deion Sanders could sustain a football program. It's going to be an interesting year. Could be make it or break it. That's what I'm gonna call it about the Buffaloes for sure.
Good stuff right there. We'll move on to Austin's circle game on the schedule, the road trip to Orlando to take on UCF. And you know what? I'm gonna come right out and say it. I am not confident that the Sun Devils will win this game. Historically, the Sun Devils have played poorly in the Eastern time zone, and traveling west to east, I think that this will be this will just be another case of how difficult it is to play on the East Coast. I think that by this point this will be game 7 of 9 in a row. Maybe we're looking at injuries, or not even injuries, but guys just banged up, not playing at 100%. I think that that this is the perfect situation of a trap game for the Sun Devils. I'm gonna go out with a 43% chance of winning.
That makes sense. I mean, historically, yes, they're not great on the East Coast. This is one of those rarely visited areas of the country for the Sun Devils. It's going to be humid there, even though this is going to be November, so maybe it'll have cooled off just enough down in Orlando. But still, it's very hard to go into UCF's building down in Camping World Stadium
The bounce house.
Sorry?
Isn't it the bounce house?
Yep, the Bounce
Yes.
House, Space City. Though I believe another purpose for that venue is going to benefit ASU. I'm going to call upon the gods of the Pop-Tarts Bowl to bless ASU as they go to that building and let chaos reign. So I feel like this is not an easy game, as much as I feel like a lot of people would look at this and be like, oh, it's UCF. Maybe like they should be able to handle that. Like we said at the beginning of this, UCF is a program on the rise. Would not be surprised to see them be a contender in the Big 12 in the next couple years. I still think ASU can potentially get this done, so I'm going to give them a 53% chance.
I'm going to go a little higher than Austin here. I'm going to go 62. UCF is one of those teams that is on the rise. I think they could potentially be this version of what ASU was a few years ago, what Houston was last year. That kind of surprising team is saying, "Oh, you're here under a second-year head coach." But we'll see what they can do over Orlando. I don't know. UCF's one of those teams where I didn't put much interest into last year in terms of when I watched, so it's kind of hard for me to be comfortable in that prediction. But a game ASU should win in theory.
Give us your take on UCF and how winnable it is.
It's too early to even predict, knowing that it's January. It's been almost a month since Arizona State's football season has come to an end to a Sun Bowl loss, which there has been a lot of changes since then. So basically, I could see the Sun Devils, maybe it's a hot take, I could actually see the Sun Devils winning the game at UCF, knowing that how both teams have come a long way, but Arizona State with the return of Kenny Dillingham, but how they could continue to sustain their longevity of success for the Sun Devils, especially how they've been building from scratch throughout the last 2 years. I still could see the Sun Devils winning. If they win, you'll thank me later.
All right. Well, that's what we're doing here. We're getting our way too early outlook out there, so we can review the tape in November and see just how right or wrong we were. Hopefully there's more right than wrong, and where some of us are wrong, I hope it's in the Sun Devils' favor. Moving on to the last home game of the season, it will be senior night against Oklahoma State, the first full season of the post-Mike Gundy era. Are we going to be seeing an Oklahoma State team that catches lightning in a bottle? Are we going to be seeing a team that's going through a lot of growing pains? I'm leaning towards the latter. I think that the Sun Devils send the seniors off the right way with a win. I'm gonna be bold here and go with a 93% chance of winning.
I thought I was going to be the bold one saying 90%, but I'm with you there. This is definitely this is a must win. This is a game that if you lose this game, anybody calling into doubt what type of, I don't know. I don't want to say you want to call doubt into Kenny's leadership, but this is the type of game that if you lose this game, what's going on? That's an unacceptable loss. The only way you could potentially justify it is if Oklahoma State starts pulling an Indiana and is 10-1 by you get to this point. So I don't think there's any acceptable outcome except a win here.
I've seen predictions saying, "Oh yeah, Oklahoma State's." For way too early predictions saying, Oklahoma State's going to be a 10-win team. Pump the brakes, people. I don't think that's going to happen. It's a first-year head coach moving from North Texas who was good, but they, in a very good group of 5 conference in the American, they didn't win, and they didn't even make their championship game, mind you. So they were in a lesser conference, the probably third best team, maybe fourth, depending on how you'd rank Navy in there, as those were, along with Memphis and Tulane, as the top four teams. And I'm just not seeing it. I think in 2 years they could be the Arizona State, make a run out of nowhere. But for next year, I think they're going to be a 3-9 team. They might sneak their way into a bowl game, but I think it's going to be an 86% chance for me.
And let's be honest, there's only one Kurt Signetti. He resides in Bloomington, Indiana. I don't think that we're going to see the same thing happen with Oklahoma State. But stranger things have happened. Give us your take on Oklahoma State and how winnable that is for the Devils.
Thank you all. Ooh. Oh wait, can you hear me? Okay. Oh shoot.
Yep, we got you. Maybe
I'm not sure she can hear us.
Maybe we lost Aya there for a little bit, so we'll circle back to her on.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you now.
Okay, perfect. So I can see Arizona State winning the game at home over Oklahoma State. Like what Andrew said, I agree with all the points he has made about Oklahoma State. I mean, they haven't had a ton of success throughout the past few years, so it's a possibility that Arizona State could find a way to basically win the game and carry on the momentum to Tucson, in which the Wildcats won the game on their home court, on their home field. It's going to be really interesting. I can see another win, like a back-to-back win over Arizona. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, so you're calling a Territorial Cup win. We're going to keep you on the spot here. Are you predicting a Territorial Cup win for the Sun Devils this year?
Yes, I am.
Ooh, all right. We've got our first vote of a Territorial Cup win. I too am going to vote on the side of a Territorial Cup win. It's worth noting that this is the 100th playing of the Territorial Cup. So this, down in Tucson, this is. I feel like this rivalry could be shaping back up to what it was during the Rich Rod versus Graham years. I think this has very strong potential to be. Whoever throws the last punch is really going to take the game in any given year. I don't think that we're looking at a stretch of dominance from either team for the time being, but I think that this year is Arizona State's turn to return the cup to its rightful place in Tempe.
Yep, I'm going to join you there on that one. I'm going to take I'll take ASU to go down to Tucson, give them a taste of their own medicine, get a little bit of revenge. I'm going to be bold enough to say that I'd give them 70% chance to do that this year. I
was going to go with I was going to go with a 75.42% chance of winning. Got to give that Pat Tillman shout out.
1975 national champion shout out there, huh?
Exactly.
I do want to make a correction on my last prediction. North Texas did make the American Conference Championship and lost. I was misremembering there, but still, the point stands. For this Arizona game, in the Kenny Dillingham era, the winning team was on the road. So, with that being said, I will be favoring Arizona State, but I think this will be a close battle. I think it, like Tom said it, whoever throws the last punch is going to win this game. These two teams might be fighting for a Big 12 championship title game spot in this game. That's how I think, if both teams are up to their ceiling, that's what I think fans can expect. But like I said, it's going to be two great teams, I think, fighting for it. So I'm going to give ASU a 51% chance to win.
All right, well, there we have it, our week-by-week breakdown of the season. We will, of course, have much more football coverage all throughout the year, both on Devils in Detail and here on Echo from the Buttes. We'll move on to the hard court. Both the men's and women's basketball teams were in action yesterday. We'll start with the women going on the road to West Virginia, and it was a little bit of a back and forth game. pretty evenly played throughout the first half. Arizona State pulled out to the lead to close out the third quarter, but then foul trouble really started to get a hold of the Devils, and West Virginia pulled away for the 53-43 win. It's obviously it's much too early to to question Molly Miller, but how far does this team go this season, and how is this disrupting the hopes of a tournament run? Aya, we'll start with you.
So Arizona State did lose that game. They were very close to getting the upset over the number 2 ranked West Virginia Mountaineers. I mean, respectfully, both of them have had a low scoring game between those two teams. But in the fourth quarter, turnovers and drawing fouls has definitely cost a game for the Sun Devils. I mean, the Mountaineers, according to the Sun Devil Athletics website, Arizona State, it made only one bracket jumper that got raised within 4 with 63 seconds remaining of its 9 shots. Like, I mean, they've struggled to score. They struggled to score in the last few minutes of action. And the Mountaineers have scored the game's last 6 points from the free throw line. 14 of West Virginia's 19 free throw attempts came in the final quarter, in which there has been a notice that whenever they get into some sort of foul trouble, like that could definitely cost them the game as well. And West Virginia's 53 points represented the 11th time this season. Arizona State has allowed fewer than 55 points. Like, I mean, that's good that they've been focusing on their defensive identity, but there has to be like a lot that they can improve on heading into Saturday morning's game against Cincinnati, which it was moved up to the morning time due to the inclement weather. So they'll close out their road trip, and then before facing Arizona's Wildcats in the annual Territorial Cup game in Tempe on Wednesday. So the Sun Devils were -4 in turnovers, but however they were +6 points off of turnovers, which is good. But they just need to be more careful on the fouling as well.
And anytime you don't have any free throw attempts as a team, you're already going to be behind the 8 ball. But Gabby Elliott, Mikhail and Brackens with 15 points apiece, only 13 points combined out of the rest of the team. Is that a systemic issue throughout the team? I'm going to open this up to anybody who wants to answer that. Is that a systemic issue around the team?
I would say they need more production from not only the bench, but also like from the starters as well. Marley Washington, it's like, even though she's been all over the place when it comes to the starting guard position, Molly Miller still needs to rely on Marley to make sure that she scores, help the Sun Devils win more. Like, not only like for like the contributions, but like on both ends of the court as well.
Austin and Andrew, any takeaways that you guys had from this game from afar?
It was disappointing. I was a little surprised when the notification came up that they lost this game, but especially in the manner that they did, only getting 43 points on the board. But I think they'll rebound. Again, this is another one of those instances where we've probably gotten a little too used to Molly Miller's team winning and doing so in the fashion that they had. I mean, this is still her first year at the helm. There's going to be growing pains. I think the only thing we can really ask for is that these are infrequent losses, and for all we know, they could go on another winning streak coming up here starting with Cincinnati. But I think you give Miller and this roster a little bit of grace and just let them continue to do what they're doing. I think they're going to prove that they can continue to rebound from this and still act as a bubble team going forward for the NCAA tournament. And I'm confident that they're going to be able to rebound and pull off a few and find a little bit more consistency down the stretch here.
I agree with you, Austin.
I do too. Just the big takeaway for me is free throws. If you can't get to the line, you're not going to win many games. Simple as that. Like, going 0 for 0, like, I don't know what the stats are when you don't attempt a free throw, but your record probably isn't a good record when you do that. So that's something that they're going to have to figure out, is try to draw more fouls, whether that be offensive or defensive. But we'll see how this team goes. I'm generally optimistic for the future of this team, both the short term and the long term.
Well, like I said, next game for Sun Devil Women did get moved up to 10 a.m. on Saturday morning at Cincinnati before coming back home to face the Wildcats at home from Desert Financial Arena Wednesday, January 28th at 6:30 p.m. tip-off. Moving over to the men's side, and
I'm gonna get going, guys. So have a lovely night to all of you guys.
thanks,
Thank you
you
for
too.
inviting me in.
Thank you, you too.
We're moving over to the men's side, and what more can we say but just another day in the life. I think that's about the best I can sum it up for those of us who do watch ASU men's basketball on the regular. Sun Devils actually had a halftime lead, 35-37, and just fell apart in the second half, losing 75-63. Head coach Bobby Hurley, after the game, made the comments of not having a true home court advantage, and just this team not being able to play its best even at home. That's not what you're wanting to hear out of your head coach, whether he is in the last year of a lame duck season or if he is mid contract. This is how much is the last straw when it comes to Bobby this season, and do you think that Graham just takes a swing and cuts him loose with a handful of games left to play?
He's lost the locker room. He's admitted he's lost the locker room. I don't know how you can keep a coach around who does not have authority, who has admitted he doesn't have authority anymore, especially when games are being played. If they're not going to listen, they're saying they're not listening to him, they're not going to be making the adjustments that he's recommending. I mean, this is not even like a full-on mutiny. It's a coup. It's a completed coup. He does not have the locker room. He does not have the command that a head coach should require. It's a very difficult position that he is in, that Graham Rossini is now in, because the optics of this are not great, and that if you keep him around just out of respect for the fact that this is his last year, he's been the most successful coach in school history. He's been the longest tenured. But do you really want this to drag out in a likely embarrassing fashion, and that Hurley is just there on the sideline because he has to be? These guys are not listening to him apparently, and they're going out there and just they're playing basketball, but this isn't. They're not playing college basketball. It doesn't seem to be any discipline. There's no hierarchy here, and as much as West Virginia at 13-6, that's a good ball. That's a good ball team. They're potentially going to threaten for the bubble here if they keep going the way they're going. But this was an unacceptable loss at home to a team that you should have beaten. And the fact that Hurley is now just waving the white flag, I think he's just asking to be let go at this point. It sounded like a cry for help or a cry for mercy, really, than anything else.
And Austin, you bring up the point of just being on the sideline because he has to be. Watching his body language throughout last night's game, it was very much like Marshawn Lynch saying, "I'm just here so I don't get fined." He looked, it was not the look of a coach who was actively interested in what was going on in the game. I did not see him turn 4 different shades of red throughout the game. I'm looking at this shell of Bobby Hurley and wondering, where's the fire that he's known for? Where's the passion? You can tell that he is just resigned to the fact that he is done here at the end of this year. And I think that you're absolutely right. This is a call for help. It's a call for call on high to be rescued from having to coach out the rest of the season.
Yeah, I feel like there's a similar point on last year's season that he had a similar message in the media, which I don't know. For me, is if you keep him, I think if you let him go early, you have to. For me, if you let him go, you have to have one of his potential replacements for the long term be on this coaching staff? Is your next coach on the staff? And if the athletic admin say no, we don't want any of these people, I don't see any huge reason to move off Hurley if you know all the guys on the other side of that bench aren't going to be your head coach next year. Yeah, I'll do Hurley the service of letting him ride it out. But if there's a guy that you want to try out, possibly for the next season, I'm all for promoting that person. But you have to be promoting that person because you think he's going to be your head coach next year, or you think, oh, he could be your head coach next year. If you're just putting a guy to put a guy out there, no one wins there. And
looking at the staff as it is right now, do you see anybody that could be the coach for next season?
I don't know how the athletics admin feel. They could go with someone on the roster. If it's me in charge, I'm not, because I think this program, whatever's left of it right now, needs to be brought down with a wrecking ball and just restart at this point, because that's where I think it's at, which is unfortunate to be saying this, but I think if you kind of saw what happened with women's basketball, they went with someone who had no ties to ASU, but brought in a culture. She adapted, and Molly Miller adapted to the ASU culture. You see her at a lot of other sporting events. You wouldn't know that she wasn't a Sun Devil before this year. You need to find someone to do the same thing for men's basketball, and for me, I don't think that someone's in this room at this point. And kind of just go further, you've got on Hurley's potentially lost the locker room. You've got a player on Twitter responding to burn hurricanes right now. Just like the situation has gotten bad, and I want to remind everyone that there's been, with the past 2 seasons, there's been a player that didn't finish the season that started the season with the team, with Jose Perez leaving early with that whole thing, and then BJ Freeman getting dismissed from the program. Could we see another one at this point? That's not out of the realm of possibility at this point.
Yeah, we're really hoping it doesn't come to that, but at the same time, it wouldn't be entirely surprising with how this season has gone. It would just be one more mark on the list of here we go again. But the Sun Devils will be back in action on Saturday, hosting Cincinnati, before heading on the road to play UCF on Tuesday, January 27th, and returning home next Saturday, January 31st, for a 12 noon tip-off against the Arizona Wildcats in the second game of the Territorial Cup series. Moving on to hopefully some happier topics. Hockey's back in action, hosting North Dakota, but before we get into the preview of this weekend's series, there were 4 Sun Devils that were nominated for national awards over the last couple of weeks. First, we'll start with the Mike Richter Award, which goes to the most outstanding goaltender in all Division I. Both of Arizona State's goaltenders, Connor Hasley and Samuel Urban, were nominated, making it the first time that 2 Sun Devil goaltenders have been nominated in the same season. Andrew, you've been in Mullet every weekend, as I have. Having seen the play of both goalies, do you think that both were deserving of the nomination?
Yeah, I think both were. I think, Greg Powers believes that this is the best goaltending pair he's ever had at ASU, which I'm not so sure on. Having when you had Joey DeCord on your roster for a few seasons, probably might find one of those pairs as a better pair somewhere. But this is a very good pair regardless. Samuel Urban, a lot of potential in him as a freshman. I think the nomination is as far as he'll go. I don't see any way he wins the award just because he hasn't been really outstanding. He's been good, but he hasn't just... To win these awards, you have to be outstanding, and he hasn't. Connor Hasley, the senior goaltender, he's been great, I would say. But like Urban, he hasn't been outstanding. I think depending on how Powers uses his goalies, I think there's an outside chance that Hasley can win this award if he gets a few shutouts here down the stretch. If ASU makes a run in the NCHC tournament and then the NCAA tournament with Hasley in the net, you can see him winning the award because postseason success is a huge factor in these awards. I would, because that's what matters. Teams want trophies on the wall, and not the regular season ones, but the end of the season ones. That's what really matters.
All the same, no matter whether either goaltender makes it past the nomination stage, if they advance to semifinalists or finalists, it's still a feather in their cap, still a nice line item on their career mark, and for Urban to be named to the watch list as a freshman, that speaks volumes to his potential for his future at Arizona State. But you mentioned Joey Decord and that tandem. Joey Decord is, as of date, the only Sun Devil to be named a finalist for the Rooker Award. Like you said, if Connor Hasley can string together some shutouts and gain more of the minutes in net, I think that he could also have an outside shot at winning this award. But we'll see as the season plays out. The finalists will be announced in mid to late March, with the award winner being named during the Frozen Four up in Las Vegas. Moving on to the other national award announcements that just came out on Wednesday. The Hobey Baker Award, for those who aren't familiar with college hockey, the Hobey Baker is hockey's equivalent of the Heisman Trophy, given to the most outstanding player. It's measured on a number of metrics, not only your play on the ice, your sportsmanship, but also your academic performance and your overall leadership quality. This year, there were 88 players that were nominated, representing 49 teams across college hockey. 2 Sun Devils did make the nomination list: Bennett Shimmick and Cruz Lucius, both in my mind extremely well-deserving. Cruz Lucius, of course, coming off of his injury-shortened year last year and approaching career highs in all 3 categories: goals, assists, and points. Bennett Shimmick being the true embodiment of a co-captain alongside Kyle Smolin. To me, both of these guys are extremely well deserving of their nomination, and I truly hope that one of them is able to advance to the round of 10 players that is then voted on by coaches and media alike.
I think it's a real possibility that either of them get to that stage, and there's a chance that both of them make that run. As at this point, you mentioned, Tom, Bennett Shimmick, a co-captain. Cruz Lucius is an alternate captain, I believe, or an assistant captain. Don't remember what the A stands for at Arizona State off the top of my head. But regardless, both these players on the leadership team for the Sun Devils, both these guys just are great players on the ice. Bennett Shimmick, Cruz Lucius, 1 point or 1-2 in points this year. If they can kind of rekindle that magic, because they're the last few games haven't been really finding the back of the net as much. They can make a serious push and win this award. Either one of them, I firmly believe that, and I think a lot of it's going to come down to who's the new center that they're playing with, because Cole and Potter out for the year. Whether that be, I think it's really one of. There's 3 people that you could see, and I think what I would predict most is Sean McGurn playing with the 2 of them. You can also see Kyle Smolin or Logan Morrell also on that line. I don't think it will be Braxton Whitehead, but we could see. Coach Powers didn't really say anything on Tuesday that he indicated either way. I don't think he really knew at that point. Now we're recording this Thursday. He probably has that picture of what that lineup card is going to look like tomorrow, and I'm curious to see what he'll do with that, because Lucius and Shimmick should produce for the Sun Devils and should make a run for the Hobey Baker Award.
Absolutely, they should, and both guys really will have to shoulder a bulk of the scoring, because as you just said, Colin Potter out for the season, undergoing shoulder surgery as we're recording this on Thursday. He he was scheduled to undergo the surgery today, joining Jack Beck, who was out for the season. And the aforementioned Bennett Shimmick was practicing earlier this week in a non-contact jersey after missing the second game of the Miami series at the beginning of January. Unsure of his status as of Powers' comments on Tuesday. Again, like you said, Andrew, I'm sure he's formulating that picture in his own way, but I would expect that we will see Shimmick's status be determined on game day on Friday. But looking ahead to game day,
I tend to think he'll play. Just as a pure guess, I know nothing about what he's dealing with. I'm not a doctor. I don't know, but I just think he's going to try to tough it out and play in this crucial series against North Dakota. I think he's going to want to get that chance to potentially see Gibson Homer, his former teammate, again here, and Tim B. Coach Powers, he kind of said, he could return if he doesn't play North Dakota. He'll be back next week, so we'll see if he returns or not. But I tend to think he will return it.
The kind of player that that Shimmick is, I would think that he is going to do anything that's within his control to be able to be out on the ice this weekend. And looking ahead to the series with North Dakota, the Sun Devils should be getting a couple of other injured players back. Johnny Waldron missed the series against Miami, as did Lincoln Keene. Coach Powers indicated that both players should be back in the lineup, which is really testing the depth that Coach Powers has touted all season long. But this is, in my mind, this is the put up or shut up weekend of the season. Is this going to be the start of the Sun Devils' push to top 4 in the conference and home ice advantage in the first round of the NCHC tournament, or is this going to be a season-defining series loss that puts the Sun Devils in a tailspin and puts them at risk of falling into that 9th spot? Because as the standings are today, only 5 points separate Arizona State in 5th place from Colorado College in 9th place.
I'm gonna make the prediction of neither. I think it's gonna be a split with a split. I think a win on Saturday, loss on Friday. What this team has done so many times this year. You have to go a long way back to find the last time they lost on a Saturday game. Before, if memory serves me correctly, it was the Colorado College game was the last Saturday loss. But still,
I was there for that one, I think.
So, Austin, you're the reason.
I'm the reason. I won't be there this Saturday, so they're going to win.
Yeah, so that's something the Sun Devils have done so many times this year is split. They haven't had a series where they've swept a team and beat that team twice in a row. They did take the 2 in-season tournaments in the Desert Hockey Classic and the Icebreaker, but they haven't found. They did beat Ohio State. They did sweep them, but I will put a little caveat with that because both those games were overtime games. They haven't swept a team winning or getting that full 6 points, even though that wasn't that was a non-conference series. But those true regulation wins, which bump you up in the NPI more than an overtime win does, but regardless, this is a time where the Sun Devils do have to win as many games as you can. You have to split at bare minimum. Take 4 points if you can with a loss in overtime. At the end of the day, I just don't think this team's going to go into a tailspin. I think this team's probably just going to putter out for the rest of the year with all these injuries. Be like a 5-6 seed, win a game in the NCHC first round, but wind up losing the series, and then season's over. I don't think they'll miss the tournament. I don't think they'll head into a tailspin. I think they'll just kind of putter out with all these injuries. You've got Waldron coming back, who's going to replace Potter in the lineup in some way. If Shimmick comes back, that means Tony Achilles going to be the other healthy scratch, and then it'll be interesting for me at least, Tom, to see when with Keane coming back, who's going to be the scratch on the defensive side. Will it be Sam Court or Tucker Ness? Because I think they're going to keep Joel Shelberg in there. I think they're going to keep Anthony Dowd in there. I think they're going to keep the 3 left side defensemen over there. So I'm not sure which way they're going to go. That's interesting to me. And one more piece of news, if this depth really gets tested here down the line, Hunter Mullet has been practicing with the team. If they have to get another guy, I would suspect Hunter Mullet would be the guy with all these injuries and the 2 players departing back to the CHL. He might play a game this year if we see some injuries.
I believe Coach Powers said during his comments, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he said that Hunter was just a practice body. I don't think that there is any realistic expectation that he will be added to the team. And even so, I believe that the Sun Devils are still, they'll still be hampered by the House settlement and the roster cap of 26 players. If you look at the roster right now, the Sun Devils are at 26 players. I don't see any way for them to add a player at the at this point in the season. I believe they would have had to already designate their designated student athletes, or whatever the term is, to be able to circumvent that roster cap. At this point in the season, even if Coach Powers was that desperate, I don't think he could add Hunter Mullen to the roster.
I don't think he did say that, but you might be right, Tom. This House settlement with the designated student athletes is complicated to follow, easiest to follow. When you think it's easy, there's this wrinkle. So
what I'm going to be watching this weekend is, which game does Gibson Homer get to start in net for the Hawks? Will head coach Dane Jackson put Jan Spunar out there for the Friday game, or will he let Homer get the Friday start in his return to Tempe? I want to get perspective from both of you guys on that.
I'll go first here, Austin. I think he'll get the Friday. I could see it going either way, but I think he'll get the Friday game. Mullet Arena is a tougher place to play, I would say, in the NCHC, especially for Nodak, because Nodak might be the hardest place to play in the NCHC, and then besides that, Western Michigan's up there, Denver's up there, and ASU is up there as well. I would say is the tougher places to play. And you might say, oh, you're a freshman, you haven't seen this place before. Gibson Homer, you've seen the Mullet Arena often. You know what it's like to play. You'll get the start. Spunar, you can learn from him. I think that's the route they're gonna go, rather than Spunar. You're better than Homer, so you're going to start Friday. That would be the argument I would imagine for if it were to go that way. But regardless, I think Homer will be starting Friday, and it'll be interesting to see who Arizona State goes on the other side too, because I think that's also up in the air.
Austin, your take on who's going to get the net for North Dakota? What will it be? Will it be the returning Sun Devil, like Andrew is saying? And I'm tending to agree with Andrew as well. I think that Homer's going to get the start, having played here for 2 years.
Yeah, I think you, as a coach, you probably want to get that out of the way, especially if you're thinking that's the weaker of your two going into this matchup. I feel like I don't think you'd call it a sacrificial lamb type of start, but considering ASU is set up to potentially dent Gibson a little bit here. I feel like North Dakota would potentially want to put him up first in this Friday game, get a little bit of that rust shaken off early, let his team settle in a little bit against their opponent, and rather than going in guns blazing, taking the Friday game with your best goaltender, and then Saturday you're tired, you're fatigued from that first game, and then you're letting up potential easier goals with Gibson in net there against his old team. I think you get that out of the way first, because there's a greater chance that Gibson settles in better in the second and third period. The team defends better around him. The offense gets going on a Friday game, and you potentially steal that, or if you somehow get pushed to overtime. That's a more desirable scenario than going in, taking a Friday game with your best goaltender, and then potentially missing out on all the points on a Saturday game.
Yeah, and with Homer getting the if he does get the start, the Mullet faithful are not going probably will not be giving him a very warm reception. And I'm gonna go out here on the record and say I don't think that any poor reception for Homer is deserved. I think that given his career for the Sun Devils, he's not going to be deserving of any boos or otherwise that he does get. But we saw T.J. Sumpenfelter get a very chilly reception when he got to start the opening game for North Dakota last season. If I know hockey fans, they have very short memories, and it's oh, you left me, so you suck. But
Yeah.
As far as who's going to get the start at net for the Sun Devils, my leaning is towards Connor Hasley. He got the win in Grand Forks back in November. He's gotten the last I believe 4 games in a row, maybe 3 games in a row. But I think that Coach Powers will give Has the start for the Friday game before turning to Urban for the Saturday game.
Urban was the most recent to start for the Sun Devils in the Miami series. He got the shutout there.
Right, he got the shutout.
So before that game, I always said, oh, it's definitely Hasley. But with Urban coming off the shutout, I'm not so sure for me anymore. I still lean Hasley to start Friday and then Urban Saturday, but I'm not surprised about anything in terms of goaltending on who's starting which way for both teams. The only real surprise for Arizona State, if they were to trot out Chase Ham as their starting goaltender one of these 2 games, that would be a surprise. But other than that, nothing would surprise me in terms of how they play it. If it's even Urban twice or Hasley twice, I won't be surprised.
That is if Ham is off the injury report. He was listed on the injury report for the Miami series as well. So, but Ham hasn't seen any minutes this season. The hope is he doesn't have to see any minutes unless Arizona State is up by 8 goals or down by 8 goals, and Coach Powers says we can have some minutes.
Yeah.
This is a very crucial series for the Sun Devils. Really got to have at least 4 points. You can't. Sun Devils can't be going into these series and playing for splits because they're just going to be staying net even in the standings, won't be gaining any ground. And as I look at the NCHC standings right now, I think that Minnesota Duluth is the team that has the most risk of falling out of that top 4 spot with a very tough schedule coming up and losing their own goaltender Adam Guyon to the Olympics for a stretch in February. That will be it'll be a critical stretch for the Sun Devils to make up ground and try and sneak their way into that top 4 by the end of the season. Well,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm running some NPI numbers right now. Hypotheticals. I'm giving ASU a win Saturday night or Friday night and an overtime loss Saturday night, and that would move ASU. I didn't give any other teams hypotheticals, so it might be a little bit off here in terms of how the real life situation would play out, but that would move Arizona State up to 19 for what it's worth in the NPI with a 4-point weekend.
So what if you factor in other teams splitting, getting sweeps over there? I'd maybe knock them down to 22 potentially.
I think realistically, you could see 21 as a final landing spot with a win and overtime loss.
Yeah, it just depends on how these other games go. Sweep, who wins, who losses, what's expected, what's not. Yeah.
It's going to come down to the wire in the race for the Penrose Cup. Only 12 games remaining for the Sun Devils, but the most important games here at Mullet Arena, hosting North Dakota, currently number 3 in the NPI, leading team in the NCHC. Games will be on Friday at 7 p.m. and Saturday at 5 p.m. If you're a student and you don't have your ticket yet, get there. If you are in the Phoenix area and don't have your ticket yet, get a ticket. You don't want to miss this series. Any other closing thoughts from you guys before we sign off?
Yes, actually, I don't think we talked about it last episode, but Willie Bloomquist did sign an extension.
Yes, he did. Yep, a two-year extension, I believe. Correct, Andrew?
2 years. So that would so that would put him through the end of the 2028 season for Bloomquist. So that was announced a while back, and I don't think we talked about it. I think this is an adequate extension for the results Bloomquist has put up. I think don't tie him down to your long-term future, because he hasn't put up the results that should be the standard yet, but he's been improving every year. The hire of Jeremy Accardo as the pitching coach, I think, was potentially a home run hire. The ERA improved by over a point, which is huge. If Accardo can really develop something here in Tempe, I think this team will be a force to reckon with looking at the baseball season.
Yeah, I think it's also it's an appropriate extension, and this is the time to really get this program back to the prominence that it once had. Having not been to Omaha since 2010, really an opportunity to build off of last year's tournament appearance and work towards getting back to a super regional. Take it one step at a time. Don't try and go for Omaha right off the bat, but take it a step each time. Advance further in the regional, get to a super regional, and then start setting your sights on Omaha. I think with consistent incremental improvement, I believe that the right pieces are in place right now, and I think that with the right tutelage under Bloomquist and the rest of the coaching staff, I think that this team, this program can make it back to the promised land. All right, that's all for me. For Andrew, for Austin, and for Aya, who joined us earlier as our basketball expert, I'm Tom Harden, and as always, give 'em Hell Devils.